As flames engulfed ancient Rome, Emperor Nero reveled in the spectacle of destruction. 2,000 years later, another leader rallied his supporters to storm the Capitol.
We're gonna walk down and I'll be there with you.
Then watched on television as they struck at the very heart of American democracy in an attempt to overthrow an election he lost. The parallels between Nero's infamous fiddling and Trump's behavior during the January 6th insurrection are striking and unsettling. Both men, facing crises that threatened the foundations of their rule, chose personal gratification over decisive leadership, self over country. It's because of parallels like these that comparisons between President Trump and Emperor Nero have gained notable traction, particularly as concerns about threats to democratic institutions intensify. Such historical analogies often serve as frameworks for understanding contemporary challenges through established historical patterns. And unfortunately for the American empire, the parallels between Trump and Nero extend well beyond January 6th. Nero was the fifth emperor of Rome and ruled from year 54 to 68 CE. He remains one of history's most controversial figures. Historical accounts describe him as tyrannical, self-indulgent, and debauched, a ruler who gained popularity among the lower classes, partly by cutting taxes while alienating Rome's elites with his governance style. The emperor had multiple wives, was known for his excesses, and harbored an obsession with performing for large crowds. Perhaps most infamously, Nero is remembered for allegedly fiddling while Rome burned during the Great Fire of 64 CE, suggesting a callous disregard for public suffering, while indulging in personal entertainment. The explicit comparison between Trump and Nero has been articulated by various observers, most recently in a viral speech delivered by French Senator Claude Malhuret in March 2025.
Washington est devenu la cour de Néron.
Washington has become Nero's court, an incendiary emperor, a submissive court, and a jester under ketamine in charge of the purge and the public service. This metaphor casts Trump in the role of Nero, the incendiary emperor, while characterizing his administration as a submissive court, and Elon Musk as a jester, facilitating governmental purges. Malhuret's speech further contends that Trump's approach to governance undermines America's credibility with allies, while emboldening adversaries. Being his ally is pointless, because he won't defend you. He will impose more tariffs on you than on his enemies, and will threaten to seize your territories while supporting the dictatorships that invade you. This French senator may be the most recent person to compare Trump to Nero, but he is certainly not the only one. A January 2022 opinion piece in the Jerusalem Post titled "Donald Trump, the American Nero" highlighted several similarities, including both leaders' popularity with lower economic classes, their characterization as tyrannical and self-indulgent, their multiple marriages, and their obsession with performing for large audiences. Most pointedly, the article compared Nero's alleged fiddling during Rome's burning to Trump's behavior during the January 6th, 2021 Capitol attack. Just as Nero was said to have fiddled while Rome burned, Donald Trump fiddled with his television remote while enjoying watching his followers' violent assault on the Capitol of the United States in his name on January 6th, 2021. The Trump administration's actions in his second term as president have generated significant concern regarding adherence to constitutional principles and respect for democratic institutions. These concerns provide context for understanding why the Nero comparison has resonated with some observers. Since Trump's return to office, multiple sources indicate that his administration has taken actions that challenge established democratic norms and potentially threaten the rule of law. A recent Brookings Institution analysis warns of dangerous cracks in U.S. democracy pillars, specifically identifying threats to free elections, the rule of law, and anti-corruption efforts. The report characterizes the administration's early actions as a blitz of executive actions, many of which overtly challenge the checks and balances and separation of powers that are fundamental to the U.S. and constitutional governance. This assessment suggests systemic threats to the foundational principles of American democracy, rather than isolated policy disagreements. One of the most significant concerns involves the administration's apparent reluctance to comply with judicial authority. a coalition of 23 Democratic lawmakers has introduced legislation calling on the Trump administration to immediately comply with all court orders, citing 11 court orders that the Trump administration has either threatened to ignore or is not fully complying with since being sworn into office. This pattern of behavior suggests a concerning disregard for judicial checks on executive power, a cornerstone of the American constitutional system. The administration's relationship with the judiciary has been further complicated by troubling rhetoric from senior officials. President Trump posted on social media, "He who saves his country does not violate any law," while Vice President Vance claimed that judges aren't allowed to control the executive's legitimate power. These statements, along with what Senator Durbin describes as threatening messages about judges, posted by Elon Musk for his 218 million followers, represent what the senator characterizes as not amusing, but rather a danger to our Constitution. Beyond specific policy actions, the Trump-Nero comparison also draws upon similarities in leadership style and governance patterns. Both leaders have been characterized as centralizing power around themselves and prioritizing personal loyalty over institutional integrity. Appointments are based on loyalty rather than qualifications. Kash Patel, for example, an FBI director who is an unprincipled loyalist of the president and untethered from the rule of law. Public performance and image management appear central to both leaders' approaches. Nero was known for his obsession with performing for large crowds and being adored by the public. Similarly, Trump has frequently emphasized his rally attendance, social media following, and television ratings. A 2022 email from Trump to supporters referenced in the Jerusalem Post article included the statement, "There's nothing I love more than being on stage." This focus on performance over substance creates another parallel between the two leaders. Concerns about inappropriate delegation of authority also emerge as a theme. Reports indicate that unelected billionaire Elon Musk was recently granted access to the Treasury Department's payment records, potentially exposing hardworking Americans' bank account information to a team of unvetted DOJ employees who lack security clearances and congressional oversight. On February 21st, 2025, the United States District Court for the Southern District of New York granted a preliminary injunction barring this access, but the administration has so far ignored this court order. This situation raises questions about both the delegation of governmental authority to private individuals and the administration's respect for judicial decisions. Determining whether the Trump-Nero comparison is reasonable requires careful consideration of both the similarities and the differences between these leaders and their respective historical contexts. The comparison contains elements that appear substantively grounded alongside aspects that may represent political rhetoric rather than historical analysis. Several parallels can be reasonably drawn. Both leaders have demonstrated populist tendencies, maintaining significant support among certain population segments while facing criticism from institutional elites. Both have shown a preoccupation with public performance and adulation. Both have been accused of undermining established governmental norms and institutions. Both have faced criticism for their responses to national crises. Nero for his alleged indifference during Rome's fire, Trump for his reported behavior during the Capitol attack. These similarities provide some foundation for the comparison. However, significant contextual differences must also be acknowledged. Nero ruled in a pre-modern society with fundamentally different governmental structures than exist in contemporary America. While concerns about Trump's actions are serious, they occur within a constitutional republic with multiple institutional safeguards that were absent in imperial Rome. Modern communication, media scrutiny, and global interconnectedness create substantially different conditions for leadership than existed in Nero's time. Concerns about Trump's administration come from various perspectives. Advocacy organizations like Global Witness express alarm that the consequences of Trump's second term won't just be measurable in the atmosphere. They will impact people, communities, and the natural world. Legal analysts like Adrienne Lawrence warn that actions that defy the rule of law can quickly lead to an authoritarian state, and emphasize that the rule of law isn't just an abstract concept. It's what allows businesses to plan, communities to function, and people to have faith in their government in terms of it operating fairly. Unlike in Nero's Rome, contemporary American democracy possesses multiple mechanisms for responding to potential authoritarian tendencies, including legislative initiatives, judicial challenges, and civil society mobilization. These mechanisms exist. However, it is too early to know whether they will be used effectively to protect American democracy. Democratic lawmakers have introduced legislation specifically designed to hold the administration accountable for complying with court orders. Civil society organizations are engaging in ongoing litigation and peaceful protests, and developing opportunities to bolster the pillars of democracy. The Brookings Institution emphasizes the importance of actionable strategies for protecting the pillars and building stronger democracy guardrails in the weeks and months to come. American Oversight, a government accountability organization, has stated that it is prepared to fight the corruption and abuses of power that Donald Trump has promised, and to hold the incoming administration accountable to the people. This reflects a broader ecosystem of watchdog organizations, legal advocacy groups, independent media, and civic engagement initiatives that serve as checks on executive overreach, institutional safeguards that were not present in Nero's Rome. The comparison between Donald Trump and Emperor Nero represents more than just political rhetoric. It reflects genuine concerns about governance patterns that echo throughout history. While some aspects of the comparison may not fit, the underlying concerns about democratic backsliding, executive overreach, and disregard for institutional norms are substantively grounded in the administration's actions. The health of American democracy requires vigilant attention to the maintenance of constitutional principles, respect for the rule of law, and preservation of checks and balances. It requires good citizens, informed by facts and real news, who don't elect criminals. The historical cautionary tale of Nero, a leader whose governance style eventually led to institutional breakdown, serves as a reminder of what can happen when executive power becomes unmoored from constitutional constraints and democratic accountability. As American democracy navigates this challenging period, the resilience of its institutions, the engagement of its citizens, and the commitment of its leaders to constitutional principles will determine whether Trump is America's Nero